Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to the course Introduction to Urban Planning. We have been seeing that in order to execute the combined vision for the city aligned with the region and country, we have certain enablers like power, defined roles and responsibilities, plan, tools, procedure, methods. So we had seen all these things. Today we are going to look at one of the most important and strongest method of control, zoning regulation. Zoning regulation, which is used for controlling the quality of life, give a city a coordinated and beautiful look, facilitate efficient use of resources, and guide the direction of growth. At the same time, you should remember we are moving more towards flexible planning and reducing the control. Further, you may recollect court finding of 1971, in which the court finds zoning ordinance exclusionary in Oakland at Madison, case in USA. A New Jersey judge ruled that Madison Township's zoning ordinance was illegal because it prevented as many as 90% of the region's residents from getting housing in the township. The first time that a zoning ordinance was completely invalidated for being exclusionary. So one needs to take all this in perspective while using any tool for control. So accordingly, our coverage will look into the meaning of term zoning. We will review the purpose of zoning. We will try to understand differences between zoning regulation and structural regulations. We'll look at different aspects of zoning. We will look at different land use zones as per the guidelines. We will look at principles of zoning. We will walk through, in this particular session, we'll walk through the case study of draft Bhopal Development Plan. So accordingly, the learning outcomes, expected learning outcomes will be that after completion of this session, you should be able to explain the meaning of the term zoning. You should be able to review the purpose of zoning. You should be able to differentiate between zoning regulations and structural regulations and so on. And further, you should be able to discuss and list various aspects of zoning. You should be able to list and identify land use zones as per the guidelines. You should be able to use them also. You should be able to discuss the principles of zoning, and comprehensively, you should be able to review the case study of draft Bhopal Development Plan and overall relevance of the tool with its ground translation and its eventual impact on the community. Looking at what zoning means, meaning of the term. The term zoning, as understood in the town planning sense, is used as aspect of planning for allocation of land for specific purpose and activities, control of the use, height, and construction of the building, and regulation of population density in particular area. Zoning is a planning control tool, and the way governments regulate the physical development of land based on its usage, purpose, geology, and so on. It is the regulation and restriction of land uses based on predetermined plan. It defines the rules that govern what and where people and institutions can and cannot build in our cities, towns, and suburbs. With zoning, we conceptualize height, volume, and usage of the building as an architect, engineer, or owner of the property. The purpose of zoning is to protect and conserve the value of the land. Looking at the broader purpose of zoning, it is to avoid incompatible land uses coming together, prevent misuse of the land, uh, determine the building heights and density, also look at how to give direction to the development of the city, need to secure convenience, health, safety, and to look at the general welfare of the people. Looking at the difference between zoning regulation and structural regulation, zoning regulations are meant for the use of character, height, and density of buildings, and they prescribe how each parcel, means the plot of the land in a community or in a city, may be put to use. Whereas the structural regulations impose restriction on the building materials. It goes further into details into the building materials and workmanship in form of specifications of the work. Looking into the power of zoning, the zoning power, how it is executed, we see that zoning power is executed through the process of approval of plans for the proposed use and structure and by the means of site supervision. So that is how by approval system, by supervision system, we execute our zoning power. Looking at the aspect of zoning, zoning is related to main three aspects. One is density zoning, height zoning, and the third one being use zoning. In density zoning, the density of population in the residential area is controlled by means of suitable rules and regulation, whereas in the height zoning, the aim is at controlling the height of the buildings with due consideration of the content of the buildings and the street width, the marginal open spaces for the provision of light and ventilation. Whereas use zoning, which is one of the most important aspects of the zoning, it defines the use of various parts of the town, such as whether the use can be residential or commercial or industrial, recreational or special area. So we have seen different aspects of zoning. Now we look at different kind of zones. Overall, there could be 43 use zones at the development plan level within 10 land use categories at the perspective level. Permissibility could be decided by the town planner depending upon the requirement and feasibility. So now looking at the principles of zoning. So the key principles which need to be considered are: one, to provide functional distribution of work centers and the living areas, optimize the travel distance, you see how much we travel these days, and to increase in efficient functioning of the activities. Further, to promote economic development, the whole intention of the urban area is for the economic development. So, to promote economic development for all sectors of the economy by providing more economic space and efficiency, to preserve sensitive areas at the same time, to look after the forests, parks, sensitive natural resources, heritage area and water bodies and so on. Further, to rehabilitate and improve the quality of life for the residents. So likewise, we also look at securing health and safety or by segregating the hazardous industrial uses. So you may also see in the example which will follow. Further, to segregate problematic areas or special uses such as logistic, warehouses, wholesale, airport, etc. So now we're going to look and try to understand all these things through the case of Draft Bhopal Development Plan 2031, and we'll particularly look into Volume 3. We will try to understand different zoning aspects and kind of control exerted through the process and how it guides developments. We have taken this example because you have already seen the analysis as well as the proposal vision of the city. So it will be easier for you to comprehend how we are translating that here. So just to briefly refresh the problems which we had seen in Bhopal through the draft Bhopal Development Plan. We're not covering all of them, just picking a few, like challenge of conserving urban forests, water bodies and built heritage, as well as presence of low density area, FAR and ground coverage, as well as the observation about a lot of commercial activities coming in residential areas, and then also mixed land use activities were seen more in the residential area. Likewise, you see that they observed that there is lack of industrial activities, as well as observations were about haphazard diversion of land and growth of illegal colonies. So in order to address many of such kind of problems, the zoning plan was created in the proposal. So in the proposed land use plan of Bhopal city, we see that different use zones are identified. Use zoning is very important as it defines the use to various parts of the town will be put to. The zones are usually classified into various categories. You may also look at simplified land use classification given in table 9.1 of URDPFI guidelines 2015, page 382. I've taken the snip here for your reference. So you can see the range of categories which are specified here, and then the codes which are used for that, and then the kind of zone it is. So here we will walk through the example of proposed zoning from Bhopal Development Plan, looking at the zoning plan, in particular use zoning proposed for city to resolve different identified issues. First, we see the residential zone, which is further categorized into 5 subgroups shown from yellow to brown color. You see category 1 based on the existing residential zone. You see category 2, which is the proposed residential zone. You see 3 category, which is the zone for the purpose of preservation of certain areas in the city. Likewise, you see zone 4, which is the zone delineated for the purpose of urban expansion of the city. And the zone 5, you see it's delineated for low density to maintain and preserve the ecological sensitive ecology of the city of Bhopal. So we see by use zoning, different conditions and intentions are addressed even within residential category. We learned about TOD in our class as an encouraged trend in planning for efficiency and for environmental and economic concern. We see here how TOD is translated into the land use zone. In the map, you can see transit-oriented development TOD shown in brown grid along the prime movement corridors. Transit-oriented development zone is delineated as an overlay along the phase 1 of the metro in this particular city. The purpose of the zone is to allow more number of people to live and work near the metro corridor. This zone is made up of existing older structure which shall be incentivized to redevelop with higher FAR. The incentivized redevelopment of this zone shall be undertaken preferably through the local area plans. So you may also integrate, think about the local area plan we studied about. So local area plans will be prepared to ensure that the plot is utilized properly, efficiently through the merger or amalgamation, and it addresses to the widening of the roads, and then it allows parking management, and then also allows pedestrianization in this particular zone. The zone has been delineated 500 meters on either side of the metro alignment. Principally, all plots falling completely or partially within this 500-meter buffer from the metro alignment shall be included in TOD. The purpose of this zone is to allow and enable more number of people to live and work near the metro corridor. So you can see how it has been done here. In order to promote compact TOD in the city and to integrate land use and transportation interface, this particular concept is introduced. So transit-oriented zone is an effective tool to promote compact, transit-oriented development within the walking distance of public transit nodes such as BRTS and MRTS stations. Sustainable transit-oriented densification is planned to be achieved through TDR. So that's the plan proposed by draft Bhopal Development Plan. And transit-oriented zone is identified as 500-meter buffer distance on either side of the metro line 1 and 2, as you had seen in the map. It is anticipated that TOZ, transit-oriented zone, will include people to prefer to use public transit, provide housing, employment, entertainment, and civic functions within walking distance of the transit nodes, It is anticipated that it will encourage residents and workers to drive their cars less and ride public transit often. So we see that Bhopal Development Plan specifies permissible FAR. So FAR is a mean to control the density. There's also an aspect of density zoning. Here you can see in the TOZ, higher FAR is being offered, higher than the residential area. So here you see it's 3 FAR permissible, whereas for the residential it was 2. You may also reconnect your thoughts to type and levels of plans. Now we will look at Old City Zone. Old City Zone is the zone which has been exclusively identified to delineate the core walled city and extensions with its distinct character and heritage features and fabric. The purpose of the zone is to incentivize heritage conservation and allow controlled urban regeneration to maintain the overall urban character of iconic old city of Bhopal. So you can remember various heritage buildings which you had seen while we were going through the development plan proposal. For the purpose of conservation of heritage precincts and structure within this zone, the appropriate authority has recommended to undertake preparation of heritage conservation and management plan for Old City Zone, where they would identify and categorize all structures and precincts based on their heritage value. This heritage conservation and management plan would also be prepared by the urban local body or any appropriate authority, along with the local communities and relevant heritage committees to identify heritage structure and heritage precincts as listed by the State Archaeological Department in the Old City Zone. So based on this management plan prepared by the authority, the plot owners within the zone will be incentivized to undertake preservation and conservation of their heritage properties through receipt of heritage TDR, transferable development rights. Once the heritage conservation and management plan for the zone is prepared and approved by the appropriate authority, the regulations identified in that plan shall prevail over these regulations. So once that heritage plan is there, so probably there'll be the newer regulations would come. You can see the FAR and TDR for the zone in the table given here. So which is the total permissible FAR plus the TDRs for encouraging the management of the heritage structures and precincts here. So you see how cultural or heritage aspect is addressed in a city through zoning. Moving on, we see next use is commercial mixed use zone. You can see how it has been distributed across the city to cater to the entire population. So in the plan you see that authority has divided 3 commercial mixed use zone as zone 1, 2 and 3. The first one zone has been delineated. The first zone has been delineated envisaging the upgradation of current commercial center of MP Nagar to commercial mixed use center. So from commercial to a commercially mixed use center. And in this, the target is to provide higher FARs so it can accommodate larger population. The idea is to transform this place from commercial to the mixed use, and with higher FAR means increasing the density of the zone. Likewise, commercial mixed use Center 2 has been identified envisaging the upgradation of existing commercial subcity. Centers of New Market and so on, this will be converted to commercial mixed zone, commercial mixed use center with higher FAR. Similarly, commercial mixed use center 3 has been identified as a new proposed commercial area under the Bhopal Development Plan 2031. You see here, by changing the use zone from commercial to commercial mixed center, they are changing the nature of the place to counter the identified problem as well as further by altering the FAR, they are going for higher density, and you can see the use of density zoning tool. Density zoning, the density of population in any area is controlled by means of suitable rules and regulation. So here you can see the FAR in Bhopal Development Plan. In case of residential, you can see 2. In case of TOD area, you can see 3. In case of old city zone, you can see 2 plus TDR and so on. You can, in commercial mixed use, you can see the range from 3 to 5 FAR. Further, municipal corporation would be charging betterment levy, one-time payment on mixed land use activities. So you see how the resources are mobilized when such services are provided. The density of population per unit area may either be expressed as gross density or net density. The gross density is defined as the average density of population per unit area of the whole residential zone. The net density is defined as average density of population per unit of the housing area, including local roads only and excluding open spaces, public institutions, shopping centers and so on. We may further find detailed formula in URDPFI guidelines in point 7.3.3, page 236, provided it for your reference here. So you can see it for both residential as well as non-residential area. So you have seen partly how density zoning control is used. Moving on, we see special planning zone in Bhopal Development Plan. The special planning area comprises of the area identified for area-based development under Smart Cities mission. You may connect initial lectures of special purpose plan on smart cities here. The permissible FAR to regulate density is FAR 2 here, as you can see in the table. Moving further, we see another kind of use zone, which is industrial. The industrial zone has been delineated to identify areas where large, medium and small scale industries activities are either currently located or are proposed to be developed in future for the purpose of promoting secondary sector economy in the region. You further see that industrial zone 2 is there. You see industrial zone I2, which is there. This zone has been delineated to identify all industrial areas where the current permissible activities are unfit for human habitation. The purpose of this zone is to ensure that non-compatible activities to this zone, such as residential areas, are not allowed to be made permissible in close proximity. So they have been placed farther ahead. So you see here how use zoning is done for economic purpose as well as for the environmental safety. You can see how obnoxious industries are located in the extreme end of the city, taking care of wind direction and away from the residential area, and located in the agriculture zone with the buffer area. You may also recollect the gas tragedy in 1984 experienced by the city, the loss of life. One reason being the location and the wind direction. Moving on, we see the another kind of zone, which is public utility and facilities zone. This zone has been identified for provision of key infrastructure in Bhopal planning area. You can see how it has been uniformly distributed to cater to the entire city population. We also see public and semi-public zone. The zone is marked in red, has been identified for large-scale institutional, administrative, educational, health and social cultural activities within Bhopal planning area. Further, we see parks and gardens. Zone has been also created, G1. This zone is delineated to incorporate various levels of existing land and proposed major green areas, including park at the city level, regional level and district level in the planning area of the city. Moreover, you also see play field, stadium, open exhibition zones. You also see geological botanical gardens as a G3 zone. This has been delineated to incorporate all existing geological botanical garden premises in the Bhopal planning area. Activities as per the guidelines of the Environmental Ministry of Government of India shall be permissible in these zones. We also see lakefront. This zone has been identified to delineate all existing areas where lakefront development was undertaken within Bhopal planning area. We also see the city forest, which has been delineated to secure high intensity vegetation across the city. You also see how the topography aspect and environmental considerations are addressed through the use zoning here. Now moving forward, we also see transportation zone. The major transportation elements of the city have been identified under this zone, including airport, railways, cargo, bus terminal and stand, bus stop, transport nagar, metro roads, depot and multi-level parking and so on. You can see here. So you see how city and regional level infrastructures are taken care through use zoning in this case. Moreover, you also see that the lake and catchment zone has also been identified at CZ1. This zone has been delineated as most sensitive areas with stringent regulations around it. So you see Bhojtal. This zone has been delineated, incorporating areas within, like they have created buffers of 50 meters to 50 meters and above and so on, and what kind of activities would be allowed in there. So Bhojtal Lake and Catchment Zone 2, CZ2, this zone constitute all catchment areas beyond the Catchment Zone 1 buffer except the villages and their extension areas in the Bhojtal Lake. This zone has been delineated to regulate eco-sensitive development for promotion of tourism and allied activities in the Bhojtal Lake catchment. Further, we see water bodies buffer. Further, we also see that there is general agriculture zone. This zone identifies the primary agriculture areas with supporting activities in the peri-urban areas of Bhopal planning area. So you can see all around the periphery. We further see how entire ecology has been addressed through the use zoning here again. So we see how the water, the green, everything has been addressed here through zoning. We further see village areas have also been identified here so that to enable village to exist without losing their organic and traditional form and character. So we see the village extension zones 1 and 2. Also, you see how distinct character of the villages are retained in the city. You may also revisit the city vision, what their vision was and how do they translate here. So we saw here, so we have covered all the different use zones. So you saw here different use zones as well as density zoning to certain extent, which restrict what use will come in which areas to provide functional distribution of work centers and living areas, optimize the travel distance, and then make efficient use of resources and allow efficient functioning of the activities through use of TOD. Then it has also looked into how to promote economic development of all sectors of economy by providing more economic space. You saw the industrial space, commercial space coming in here. Then you also looked into how they did zoning to preserve sensitive areas like all the forest, water bodies, park and other green areas you saw here. Further, you saw that how they have made provision for rehabilitation and improvement of the quality of life for the residents. Likewise, you also saw that how it is taking care of the health and safety of the people by segregating hazardous industrial users, then also keeping all the problematic areas away from the residential zones. So this was about the use zoning. Now let us see how they are regulating development through height zoning. So as we had seen, height zoning aims at controlling the height of the building with due consideration of the factors such as the bulk or the cubical contents of the buildings, floor space indexed FSI, which you had also seen previously. In the image, you can see New York City with the FSI 15. In this image, you can see Bandra Kurla complex in Mumbai with the bulk cubical content as the result of the FSI permissible here. Another way is by controlling the street width and the other adjacent marginal open space from the point of view of providing light and ventilation to individual property. In this case, the height of the building is limited by drawing a light plane at an angle of 45 degree or 63.5 degree to the horizontal. 63.5 is very commonly adopted as it gives the ratio of 2:1 height to the road width. So as you can see in the image here, the height zoning restriction depends on nature of building, type of zone and climatic conditions. Advantage of height zoning is that it controls the development of the central business area of the cities, and it is thereby assist in solving the problems associated with heavy concentration of traffic and so on. It provides aesthetics, we had already seen this. It prevents monopoly of light and ventilation. It regulates land values. And the most important aspect is that of health and traffic movement are regulated by height zoning. We will further see through the example how density zoning is achieved through regulating marginal open space. We will look at the residential general category use from Bhopal Development Plan. Residential General 2 is envisaged primarily as a residential zone with mixed use permissible based on specific conditions. This zone is primarily made of existing older structure, as you have already seen before. The purpose of this zone is to allow urban regeneration while maintaining the overall urban character of the area. So here you see that the permissible activities have been defined. So the activities which are permissible in this zone are residential activities, commercial activities, institutional activities, recreational, industrial and logistic activities, as well as transportation activity. You may see here in the table permissible use along the roads which are 12 meter and above width. So you can see here in the table. You can also see the FAR in this particular zone. Further, you can see the norms for development of individual plots, such as minimum plot size for different development type. Further, you can see details of means of access. Likewise, you can see marginal open space, such as the front road side margin, side and rear margins, minimum distance between two buildings on the same plot, permissible activities in MOS to facilitate common open space, electrical infrastructure, pedestrian parking and so on. Further, for density zoning, use regulation of maximum permissible height, as you can see in the table shown here. Likewise, to control the quality of space, it specifies maximum area for community open space. So we saw that zoning is one of the important planning tool to manage growth, regulate density, and organize land uses within the urban area. By regulating land uses, it helps to segregate incompatible uses, increase livability, and create desirable character for different areas for the city. Zoning combined with development regulations determines the supply of developable land and builds space in various zones. And then we see that zoning requires regulations and rules to avoid any developmental violation. So we saw all these things, plus how we are looking at controlling as well as creating flexibility at the same time, ensuring that it is not exclusionary. So summarizing today what we have covered, we looked into the meaning of the term zoning, we reviewed the purpose of zoning, we also looked at the difference between zoning regulation and structural regulation. We discussed and listed different aspects of zoning, and then we looked into detail through the case study. We listed and identified land use zones through the help of the case study here as well. We discussed the principles of zoning, what's the core purpose behind it. The entire session, we reviewed the case study of the draft Bhopal Development Plan and saw the overall relevance of the tool with its ground translation. So you could see how the entire vision, the development plan, and along with the local area plan and all these zoning tools, how entire vision is translated on ground. So these were our references. The key reference was Bhopal Development Plan, the new RDPFI guidelines, and the text of Rangwala, as well as we had previous lectures which were connected here. Our coverage was limited with the scope to make you aware of the topic. There are enormous readings and movies available to explore. Few are suggested here. This is not an extensive list. You may feel free to suggest more from your experience. Please feel free to ask questions. Let us know about your concerns you have. Do share your opinion, experiences, and suggestions. Looking forward to interacting and co-learning with you while exploring cities and urban planning. So that's all for today. Thank you.